Hello and welcome to another episode of our Brothers Creed podcast, where we talk about motivation, experiences, and exploring the world around us. We are the Thomas Brothers, and I'm Jared.
And I'm Ethan. Today we have an awesome episode. We're going to be talking about famous con men and their schemes.
That's right.
Right? We're going to be talking about some people in history that are famous for being con men, but also what they did, who they were, how we can maybe avoid being conned in our life today.
Yep.
And then we're going to be talking about a lot of different types of schemes. There's people out there that,
yeah. We could probably talk for 4 hours about this. There's so many interesting schemes and cons, and like in this new modern world, we're saturated with this kind of stuff. So
yeah. Can you imagine if people put all the effort that they put into coming up with these cons into like something good?
Yeah.
The world would be a better place for sure.
It would be a better place, you know?
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get into it.
Let's do it.
Spartans! What is your profession?
Any man who must say, I am the king, is no true king.
What I do have are a very particular set of skills. Skills that make me a nightmare.
If I can change, and you can change, everybody can change!
Let us all unite! Let us fight for a new world, a decent world.
All right, so just to start off the top, we're going to share some different types of schemes. We're going to share some different con men. So the word con man, you know what that means? You know what the con in that means?
No.
Confidence.
Oh, really?
A confidence man.
I always thought maybe it was like contradictory or like
No, so
con.
You said pro and con, like people might think about that, but really what's a confidence man? Someone who has such confidence that they exude and such charisma that you believe them. And they're like, yeah, of course the IRS is auditing me and I need to send Apple gift cards.
Of course a prince from
Nigeria
has $2 million in diamonds that all I need to do is pay him $1,000 to ship them.
Yeah. You know what's funny about this is I literally had someone, like both Shanna and I today, had some random number text both of us and it said, hey, I had a really fun time last night. And then they sent a picture of some girl's like face. And
Was it the same number?
I don't know if it was the same number, but we both messaged you. So Shannon messaged me first and she's like, this is hilarious. And then I was like, yeah, that is hilarious. And then it happened to me later that same day. And I was like, who is this? I said, hey, I had so much fun last night. Let's do that again. And I was like, who is this? And then she had the picture and she was like, oh, don't you remember me? And I was just messing. I was like, oh yeah, I do remember me. I do remember you. And then she was like, do you remember this? And she sends another picture, which was not the kind of picture that I wanted to receive. And I was like, oh, geez. And so I was just like, don't ever text me again. I deleted the whole message. But, what she said, send me a nude picture of yourself. That's what that's whoever this number was. And I was like, yeah, so you can blackmail me?
Yeah, so I can blackmail you into giving me money.
Dude. And so
I'm going to send this to your employer if you don't give me a
yeah, exactly.
$500.
Or I'm going to post this on your Facebook, or I'm going to post this on your Instagram or your LinkedIn or something like that, you know? I mean, and then just last week I just had someone call me and say, Dad, is that you? Oh, son, is that you?
Yeah, that's one of the scams I'm going to talk about.
It sounded more like, Dad, is that you? That's what it sounded like. I was like, don't ever call me again.
You should be like, oh, yes, it is.
Thank
you, come again.
Yeah, I have a certain specific set of skills, and I will hunt you down. So there's tons of this. Anybody who's alive right now probably has been attempted to be scammed at one point in their life. I was just looking at a few notes here. The Federal Trade Commission revealed that consumers have reported losing more than $3.3 billion to fraud in 2020. And that's actually up massively from the $1.8 billion taken in fraud in 2019. So everybody's at their home, hey, you want coronavirus? There's a great investment opportunity. Go send your money to me in, gift cards. You're like, oh, wire the money, and then or send it in cryptocurrency. I think cryptocurrency allows this, will allow more of this extortion type of stuff. So
it's harder to trace.
Yeah, and so 1.2 billion lost due to imposter scams, and 246 million reported in losses from consumers. So crazy losses. And there's such a wide variety of scams and cons. And we're going to talk about some of them today. Why don't you start us off, Ethan? Why don't you share? Well, we have a couple different short little schemes that con men try to pull. Oh, let me ask you a question first.
Okay.
Who's your favorite con man in the movies? There's so many movies with con men in them.
I know. I didn't even know.
I was thinking about Sawyer from Lost.
Oh yeah, he's a good con.
He's a good con man, and he does the long con, and then he does the oil rig con.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of movies.
And let's see, Wolf of Wall Street. That was basically a con man.
Yeah, for sure.
The Boiler Room. That was a con. You probably haven't seen that. That's a little bit older movie. There's a bunch of. Well, obviously, Catch Me If You Can. I think you're going to talk about that.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that one.
And then, yeah.
Interesting. So I had, this is something that everyone will experience in their life to some extent or the other. And, this, I'll share a personal experience. This actually wasn't on my list, but I'll share a personal experience, right? So we had just moved into an apartment. This was years ago. We just moved into an apartment, and we had the master bedroom, and then we had our our bed and everything. But we wanted we were setting up a guest bedroom, and we're getting a queen. Actually, we had it was a full bed, was a full size bed in there, and we went on Craigslist, and I was looking for. Mattresses. Sometimes you can get, lightly used or, store reject mattresses or whatever else. And I found this guy on Craigslist that had a mattress and a bed frame, full-size mattress and bed frame. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. It looked all legit and everything else. And in the packaging, it was like in a nice bag. And I was like, oh, okay, well, it looks pretty legit and everything else. Well, I end up, it was fishy. It was fishy as soon as I started communicating with this guy. I started communicating with him, and he was like, "Oh yeah, well, I gotta get a truck." And then he's like, "Well, but I can drop it off at your house. I can drop it off at your house." And it was gonna be like $75. I mean, it wasn't like a lot. And he was like, "Oh, I can drop it off. I can drop it off." And I was like, "Oh, okay, all right." He's like, I live close to you. I live close to you. I'll just drop it off." And so he ends up delaying one day when he was supposed to come it off. He's like, I'll do it tomorrow. And so then he came the next day, and it was dark whenever he came, and he was like in a rush. And so he kind of brought it in and just kind of put it on the ground, and it was in this bag, and he was like, "Oh, okay. All right. I gotta go. Blah, blah, blah." And I was like, okay, I looked at it real quick. I kind of checked it out, and then I was like, okay. And he was like, "I gotta go." And so I was like, okay, whatever. And I just gave him the $75, and then he left. And he left, and it was, I took the mattress out of the bag, and it was like all wet on one side, like on the underside of the mattress, it was like all wet. Like, I don't know if it had been sitting in the back of the tray. It wasn't super dirty. It was clean, but I don't know if it was sitting in the back. So it was all wet, and it wasn't even a full-size mattress. It was a queen-size mattress, and it wasn't like a pillow top like he said. It was just a foam pad, and dude, he completely duped me, and I was just like, dude.
That's a bad feeling.
Yeah, I literally was like, I hate that feeling. I was like, even though it was only $75, I mean, at that time,
I feel $1,000 worth of shame right now.
At that time, $75 was like $1,000, but it was just like, man, I feel terrible, like just pit in your stomach.
Yeah,
terrible feeling.
Yeah,
and yeah, so I don't know, pretty crazy.
That's pretty crazy. One time I was in Chinatown when I went to New York once, and some guy was like, "Oh, this." He was like, "Oh, buy this cologne," and I was like, "Oh, this is like a good cologne, and it's cheap." And the stuff he sprayed smelled pretty good, so I bought this. Like, it was like $15. Bought this thing, got it home, and it smelled like pee. It smelled like straight up pee, man.
Like peed in a bottle.
I was like, "Dude, this is not what he sprayed on me, man." I was like, a note to self: never buy anything in Chinatown.
Yeah, especially there's crazy scams that happen internationally when people travel internationally, like. I was watching a couple things, and there's one that was in like a guy was in Indonesia or no, actually I think it was like India or Pakistan or something like that. And basically the scam was that the streets were just massively crowded, and it was a 2-person scam, and one guy would pick up a bunch of dog crap, and he would like make like a funnel out of a newspaper, stuff the dog crap into the funnel, and it was almost like a cake, like an icing piper, right? So you like squeeze the top of it, and it all squirts out. Well, what he would do is in the big crowd, he would pick out a foreigner, an American, or whatever else, a white person, and would, in the big crowd, would come up behind him and would squeeze that, and it would shoot like the poop all over their shoe. And then whenever the person noticed it, they just think that they stepped in dog crap. And so the person would follow them until they noticed and be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. You stepped in something. Oh, come with me, my friend. He can clean your shoes." And then the partner scam artist, he comes out of the woodwork and says, "Oh, I can clean your shoes, whatever." And so they kind of take you into a little alley and they start cleaning your shoes, and he cleans it up and he just wipes the crap off that the other guy put on.
Yeah.
And then he says, that's going to be like something absurd, like $100.
Yeah.
Or something like that. And then you're like, "No, I'm not going to pay you $100 for that." And they're like, "You have to pay us. I did a service for you. You have to pay us. We're going to call the..." And they just strong arm you into giving them as much money as, like, they threaten you, giving them as much money as you can.
Yeah,
It's
totally.
just like, what the heck?
See, let me talk about the one. This is exactly the same thing. So that's called a clip joint scam.
Okay.
Now the one that I had notes on here it's called the Beijing Tea.
Okay.
Sounds like a band. a drag racing band. So the Beijing Tea scam is a famous variation of the clip joint scam practiced in and around Beijing and some of the large Chinese cities. So the artist, usually a female, working in pairs, will approach a tourist and try to make friends. After chatting, they will suggest a trip to the to see a tea ceremony, claiming they have never been to one before. The tourist is never shown a menu, but assumes that this is how things are done in China. After the ceremony, the bill is presented to the tourist, charging upwards of $100 per head. The artist will then hand over their bill. So the girl will hand over their bill, and the tourists are obligated to basically follow suit. And so that kind of similar to yours, but like it's like, well, if you don't, so in this case, the girl is paying over too. So it's like, whoa, this is how much it cost here. So it's like more of a confidence than more of like, it's less of a total scam, because you're like, well, she's paying the same, I guess. She's a local, she knows. But like with yours, it's kind of just like, well, if you don't do this, I'm going to call the cops.
Yeah.
And we did that once we were in Mexico, and we went to a restaurant, and they freaking charged us so much money. We got like the most basic. I wanted to go get something like local. So we went to like a random place that no white person has ever been to in the history of Mexico. It was like the most dumpiest place. And they charged us like so much, man. And I was like, this is a total ripoff. And like the couple the night before, they're like, yeah, they were charging us like $10 per bottle of water. And they just kept bringing them out.
Yeah. I had a guy in Chile, a taxi driver. We lived like maybe 10 minutes from the bus station. And we got in a late bus. It was like 2:00 in the morning. Mm-hmm. And there's like a whole row of taxi drivers just sitting outside of the bus station just waiting for people. And a taxi ride typically was like $2.50 or $3 a person for that taxi ride. Mm-hmm. Well, we figured it was like in the it was the middle of the night, so it was going to be a little bit later, and so maybe a little bit more. And so we got in, and we were expecting maybe like $5-6 a person. Well, we got in and we put our bags in the back in the trunk. We got in the car, we got in the taxi, and the guy took us out to our to the house that we were at, and we got out, and he was like, "That's going to be." What was the equivalent in Chilean pesos? He's like, that's going to be $40 a person.
Oh my god!
And we were like, no. It was me and another white guy, and we were missionaries. And he was like, it's going to be $40 a person. We were like, no. I was like, I don't even have $40 on me. And he goes, well, I'm not opening the trunk to give you your bags until you pay me $40 each. And we were like, it's 2:00 in the morning, dude. I was like, I had the equivalent of like $20 on me.
Yeah.
And like literally all my bags, everything that I owned was in the trunk. And he was like, I'm not opening the trunk until you give me this money. And then we were just like, dude, we were so mad at him. But we ended up paying him basically all the money we had, which ended up being like $50 instead of the $80 that he wanted. But yeah,
that's
freaking
crazy.
people, man.
Extortion. Well, that's not really.
That is kind of like extortion.
Yeah,
it's not trickery. It's just like, yeah. But there's another one that in where was it? I think it's somewhere in I don't know, Central America or somewhere, but these guys at these major tourist places, they'll go around and they have these bracelets, and they'll walk up to tourists and be like, "Oh, you're so handsome," or "You're so pretty," or whatever, and they'll say, "Let me see your hand," and they'll start tying like a bracelet on your wrist. And it's like a little, thread bracelet or whatever, and they'll tie it on your wrist. And, even if you're like, no, I'm good. They're like, oh, it's our country, it's our tradition, right? And they'll tie it in like this triple double knot, and they'll cinch it down so you can't take it off unless you cut it off.
Yeah.
And then they'll be like, once they tie it, they'll be like, oh, okay, now you got to pay me for it.
Yeah.
And you're like, I said no, I didn't want it. And they're like, oh, well, and you're like, you can cut it off of me, or you can, and they're like, no, you can't get it off, and they're like, and they'll say, okay, well, you need to give it back to me then, and you can't get it off.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, well, then you need to pay me, or you're stealing. And it's like, dude.
Yeah. You almost want to be like, yeah, just take it back from me. Try to take it from me.
Yeah, seriously.
But there's so many like this. This other one I have is called the Rip Deal, and this is kind of an interesting one. So the Rip Deal is a swindle, very popular in Europe, and is essentially, they also call it's kind of like a pigeon drop, a confidence trick. And I like these because they're all confidence tricks. And
I had researched the pigeon drop too. It's an interesting one. Yeah.
So in this typical variation, scammers will target, say, a jeweler. And I like this one because it's kind of a business one, and offer to buy some substantial amount of his inventory at a large markup, provided he performs some type of under-the-table cash deal, originally exchanging Swiss francs for euros. So it's like, hey, if you do this, I'll buy this much jewelry from you, $10,000. I'll buy you, $300 worth of jewelry from you under the table if we don't, and the guy's like, well, I don't have to pay taxes on this. Maybe this is a good deal. So it's already kind of venturing that realm of illegal. This exchange goes through flawlessly at a considerable profit for the mark. So it has to make the mark money. Sometime later, the scammers approach the mark with a similar proposition, but for a larger amount of money, and thus a larger return from the mark. His confidence and greed inspired by a previous deal, the merchant agrees only to have his money and goods taken by sleight of hand or violence. At the point of exchange, this scam was depicted in the movie, Matchstick Men. So the same term is used to describe crime where a vendor, especially a drug dealer, is killed to avoid paying for the goods. So it's kind of like, but I like this one because it was kind of like, oh, hey, we've done business once before. Now let's do business again, but for a larger sum. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah. And the vendor gets greedy. And they're like, oh, this is working out great. It's already worked once. Great.
You kind of build that trust.
Yeah, and then you take them out for all they have.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Is that what the pigeon drop was?
Yeah, it's kind of something like that. The pigeon drop was, an example is, let's say you're in a store, right? And you walk out of the store and you come to your car, and there's some guy standing by your car, and he there's like a little package or something on the ground, and he bends down and he says, "Oh, is this your car?" And you're like, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, is this your wallet, or is this your bag? I just saw it here and I saw it on the ground and I thought it was yours because it's next to your car." And then you go, "Well, no, that's not mine because it's not yours." And then they open it, and there's what appears to be $30,000, a ton of money in this thing.
Yeah.
And then there's like a note in it that says something like payoff money or bail money or whatever else, something that's just like not kind of non-traceable, maybe semi-illegal or whatever. And then the mark is like, whoa, oh no, it's not mine. And then the guy the con that picked it up and that started this con, his partner comes in. He's like, "Hey, I heard you guys found something. What'd you find?" And then they're like, "Oh man, we found $30,000." And they talk about it. And then the one of the marks says, "Oh, well, I actually heard about something like this, and it's non-traceable money. We could each keep 10 grand." And but one will like pretend to call his lawyer buddy, and his lawyer will say something like, "Oh, okay, well, you need to keep the money together. You can't split it up for 30 days, and if nobody claims it, then you guys can have it."
Yeah.
And so they'll kind of talk between themselves, and two guys are working together against the mark, but the guy doesn't know that the two guys are working together.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Okay, well, we can't separate it. Let's come back here and let's meet back here in 30 days, and then we can split up the money." Like, okay, well, one person needs to hold the money, and one of the guys like, well, I'll hold it, and then the other con says, no, I don't want you to hold it, I'll hold it, whatever, and then they end up kind of going back and forth, and they decide to let the mark hold it.
Oh
right?
yeah,
you hold this $30,000 for us, but man, I trust you, you're a good guy, but I don't know if I trust you all the way. Maybe you could give us some sort of collateral or something like that, just in case to help us out, just in case you run away with the money or whatever. I don't know you.
yeah.
And so they'll say, is your bank nearby or whatever? And then they'll say, well, how about you just give each of us like $1,000 or $2,000? It's just like a act of good faith, and then
Not out of the bag.
not out of the bag,
Yeah.
and out of your bank account,
Yeah.
and then we'll come back in 30 days, and then you can have that money back into your portion.
Yeah.
And then the guy was like, oh, okay, all right, that sounds good. I mean, I'm going to hold $30,000, and I'm just going to give you guys a couple $1,000s to kind of appease you. But then they do that, and then eventually the guy looks in, and it's either counterfeit money, or it's fake, or it's even like the first couple bills are real, but then underneath it, it's just cut up newspaper and stuff. And so it was just all freaking con. Anyway.
Interesting, yeah. Yeah, that's...
I had you had mentioned one earlier that you got a call that was like, hey dad,
Yep.
hey dad, or whatever. That is such a common one that gets so many people, and a lot of people nowadays, well, not nowadays, but I guess always, they try to prey on the people that are maybe more weak-minded, or that the elderly, right? People that aren't as familiar with technology, right?
Yep.
Some of these computer scam people will focus on the elderly because they don't know computers as well.
Yep.
And one scam that I've always been aware of is kind of like the grandma or grandpa scam, where they'll the scammer will find somebody's number of somebody who's older, significantly older, and they call them up, and the grandma or grandpa answers, and they're like, hello, and then the person on the phone goes, grandma, is that you? And then they kind of pause, and then the grandma goes, "What?
Johnny,
Who
is
is
that
this?
you? Yeah.
Timmy, is that you? Yeah, it's me. It's Timmy.
Yeah.
It's Timmy.
Yep.
And then, oh, Timmy, you sound different. Well, I'm on a
Sick. I got
walkie-talkie.
COVID.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like, and they're like, oh, Timmy, what can I do? What's going on? And they say something like, well, I'm on vacation down in Mexico, and I got robbed, and I don't have any money. I can't get home. Can you send me some money?
Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah. How do you want me to send you the money? Apple gift cards. Right.
It's the only currency they accept down here.
Seriously. Or so and they'll scam people in like and grandma or grandpa, or typically sometimes they'll have a little bit of money, and they're like, oh, okay, how much do you need? Oh, I just need like $500 as a plane ticket back, and then I haven't eaten in 2 days. Maybe $1,000 would get me home, and then they'll send them the money.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
well, it's like basically that's elder abuse. But you know what? It's kind of similar to that, which is huge right now, is catfishing.
yeah.
Tons of people
Which
do this.
I didn't really think of that at all in a scam sense, but
Well, if you
that's
think about
exactly what
it's
it is.
exactly. It's a con. It's a con artist.
So explain what catfishing is.
Yeah,
right?
so catfishing is when you have like somebody, in whatever, usually it's in foreign countries, they'll contact an American. Lots of times it's a woman, but sometimes it's a man. There was a Notre Dame quarterback, I think.
They'll pretend to be someone else.
There was a Notre Dame quarterback that famously got catfished by some guy.
Yeah.
And they had like this relationship over text message or whatever.
Or Facebook or...
Yeah, so I was reading this one about this lady who got catfished, and the guy was like, oh, I'm going to come see you. I love you so much. So they basically pull the heartstrings of these rich women that are single and older. Oh, come see me. Well, I got to get through customs, and I need $2,000 to get through customs. Okay, I'll send you this. And then it didn't work out. Oh, hey, I'm going to get my passport. I need $4,000. This one guy had gotten $400,000 out of this lady.
Yeah.
And
because they think they're in love.
She thinks they're in love.
She thinks they're in love. And
he's
this
a
guy's
smooth
just
talker.
He's just pulling a long con, right?
I'm
He's
going to
like,
write you a poem, and then I'm going to ask you for this much money.
Yeah.
And so it's crazy how that's a major thing right now, is the catfishing thing. And let's see. I had one other one here. So this is a rainmaking. I like this one. So rainmaking is a simple scam in which the trickster promises to use their power or influence over a complex system to make it do something favorable for the mark. So classically, this is this was promoting to make it rain, kind of to make, like the farm or whatever. But more modern examples include getting someone's app featured on the Apple Store, or getting a blue check mark, or obtaining pass marks in a university entrance exam, or obtaining a job, or a politician implying that they can use their influence to get a contract awarded to the mark. So the trickster has no actual influence over the outcome. But if the favorable outcome happens anyway, they will then claim credit. If the event does not happen, of course, then the trickster may be able to claim that they need more money until it finally does.
It sounds like future tellers.
Fortune tellers.
Yeah.
Call it tree.
Yeah.
She was indicted for being a scam artist. Madame Cleo?
Yeah.
She was big on the TV back in the, early 2000s?
Yeah, late 90s.
And, she got busted because she was a scam.
Send me more money and I'll, talk to your loved ones and
reach to the other side and talk to other ones.
Interesting. I had come across one that was really interesting because this was kind of like a new one. I looked up new scams in 2022, and I watched a video about this one guy that he said he almost fell for it. And so typically you get like scam emails or something like that will have links in them that's like, oh, click this link, or that'll have, you open the email and there'll be an attachment and you click on the attachment and then that's where you get viruses and all that kind of stuff. Well, it was just a basic email that was from just a random email address, but it was a special kind of, I guess because it didn't have any attachments or anything else, it went through the spam folder and it just went right into inbox. It didn't get caught by the spam or the junk folder. And so this email basically says, it's a very well-worded email, professional-looking email, and it says your free subscription period is over, and that your credit card is now going to be charged. And it's the day and age of subscriptions. And so if I saw an email, I'd be like, what did I? Caitlin, my wife, did you subscribe to something like this? You know what's going on? And so then at the bottom, it'll have, if you have any questions, please call this number. And that'll be no attachments, no links, no anything. It's just an email. And so you're like, oh man, I don't want to get charged or whatever. And then, so you call the number and a person answers the phone, a legitimate person answers the phone. And on the email, there's like a reference number or for an account reference number. And you call the phone, somebody answers and says, oh, thank you, Mr. Thomas, for sticking with us and deciding. We're so glad that you're enjoying the service and that you decided to continue and to upgrade your subscription. And then you're like, oh, wait, what is this for? I don't want to upgrade any subscription, whatever. And they go, oh, you don't? This is for, and they'll make up something, the health services subscription that, or this or that, or allied something or another, just make up some random stuff. And then they'll say, well, I guess if you don't want to upgrade, then, you just have to cancel the service, which I can help you do that today, right? We hate to lose you, but, if you want to cancel the service, we'll do that. I can help you through that today. Sounded all disappointed. And you say, yeah, I want to cancel it. Don't charge me anything. And so the lady will say, okay, well, I'll just walk you through it. Go to this website, and they'll take you, have you go to a website, something.us or whatever. And it's a very nice website, but it has a little thing on it that has unsubscribe. And you put your email in this box that says unsubscribe, put your email in, press unsubscribe, and then it takes you and it says, okay, put your account number in. And that's the account number that's on the email. You put your account number in, and then you press unsubscribe, and then it pops up, and it asks you to download an Excel file. And if you ask the person, well, what's this file for? And they say, oh, well, we do digital signatures. All we need is just your signature to confirm that you want to cancel a subscription, and then that'll send it to us, and your credit card won't be charged. And you say, okay, all right. I mean, we're in a day and age of electric signatures and stuff. And
as soon as you open that Excel file, it's going to rip your computer to shreds.
So you download the Excel file, you open it up, and basically it's got all these macros built into it that the second you open it up and you press allow macros, boom, the Excel, a macro is basically a programmable portion within Excel that can do different tasks. Excel will run out to the internet. It'll go to a bunch of different websites and download a bunch of malware to your computer. And it'll do, malware or viruses or even ransomware where it'll lock down your whole computer and say you need to send us, 1 Bitcoin to get all your, to get your computer back or whatever, or you need to send us 50, $100 Apple, Amazon, or Amazon gift cards or something like that. Like,
wow, that's crazy.
And it's kind of smart too, because it's almost like they made you come to them to do it.
Yeah, when I was working a company once, like there was a guy that kind of made this joke thing, and he made this macro, this Excel file that when you downloaded it, he sent me emails like, hey, can you check this out? And I looked at it, and so I downloaded it, and the macro opened up. It opened up like 4 different emails and sent a message to 4 people on my team saying I'm an idiot. And I was like, and I didn't even know it sent. I was just like, dude, there's nothing in this file. And then he's like, you're an idiot. And then and everybody's looking over me. I'm like, what? And then I looked at my sent box, my sent folder, and it was the emails sent to 4 different people, 4 different email addresses on my team, and with the same message in each of those emails. And I'm like, dude, that's powerful. Like, that is scary how you can do that. I mean,
luckily one of those people it weren't like the president of the company or something like that.
Imagine if I said, hey, check this out. You won't believe what's inside this. And the president of the company says, oh my gosh, opens it up. And then I send out a message from his inbox to the entire company saying, hey, we're doubling everybody's salary,
Yeah.
Like, dude, I sent it to an all company like email address or something like that from his inbox. That's pretty scary. And also, you'd be in hot water if you did that.
Yeah. Crazy.
But yeah, that's an interesting scam. So let's talk about some people that have done some scams. Is it okay if I talk?
Yeah, go ahead. You go first.
So I want to talk about one of the most famous scammers, and this is Charles Ponzi. Charles Ponzi. So lots of you may have heard of the Ponzi scheme. So I want to talk about a little bit about this guy's history. He's got a crazy, interesting history. So he was an Italian immigrant in 1903. He came to the U.S. looking for opportunity in jobs. He said, this is what he said, quote, I landed in this country with $2.50 in cash and $1 million in hopes, and those hopes never left me, close quote. Charles Ponzi. So he got a job first at a bank. The bank eventually went bankrupt. So he kind of started to dabble in some of this darker side, some check forgery, some illegal smuggling. He did serve a small stint in prison, but when he got out of prison, he hatched a new scheme. And this is kind of interesting how he got this. So he got a letter from Spain, and in the letter, introduced him to this system of the International Postal Coupon System. So at the time, in 1918, after World War I, there was existed something called the International Reply Coupon. Now, these postal reply coupons allowed people in one country to pay for the postage of a reply to a correspondent in another country. So IRCs, is what they were known as, were priced at the cost of postage in the country of purchase, but could be exchanged for stamps to cover the cost of postage in the country were redeemed. If the values were different, there was an arbitrage opportunity there. So Ponzi would buy. The idea is he would buy lower value coupons in Italy, and then he would redeem them. He would redeem the return coupons in the. So let's just say he bought it for the equivalent of like $1, and then in Italy, and then but in whatever the currency is there, but then in the U.S. those coupons are actually worth maybe $2. And then so the idea is that he would then sell those coupons, and then he would make that arbitrage difference of $1. So he'd make 100% profit.
You do that with $10,000.
Yeah, so you can make a lot of money. So there was actually a significant arbitrage opportunity there. So the idea is that he wanted to exploit the system to buy massive quantities of postal coupons from countries with weak economies and redeem them in countries with stronger economies. So Ponzi was looking for money to do this with, and he went down to a bank. He was denied. He went to many friends and family first. So he promised friends that he could give them about 50% return within 45 days. So basically a doubling within 3 months. This was pretty attractive when the banks had interest of only 5% annually. So he actually ran an article in the newspaper at one point, and he's like, 50% return in this. And then like right below it was a bank ad that said 5% return on your thing. And so it really blew up, and it kind of started growing. He started a company in 1920 called the Securities Exchange Company. In the first month, he had 18 people with a total of $1,800 that they put in. He paid them promptly the next month with the newest set of investors. So he was paying out the interest that these people were making with the money that he was getting from new investors.
He's robbing Peter to pay Paul?
Yep, exactly. That's exactly what it was. So his scam secured over 40,000 investors, making him a millionaire in less than 6 months. An article published by the Boston Post in July 1920 estimated that his net worth was around $8.5 million. He had a 12-bedroom house, mansion, multiple cars, houses, staff. And
so was he not actually doing the arbitrage? He was just taking the people's money and okay.
Yes, I'll get to that in a second. He also had a gold-handed cane. So their news began to travel about this scheme, and he hired a whole sales team. It was kind of like the Wolf of Wall Street. He hires a bunch of sales folks to go out and do this. The clientele went from like blue-collar workers to like high-class people. There was one guy who put in like $10,000 on his own, so that was a lot of money back then. At one point, 75% of the Boston police force was invested in this. And most people, what they were doing is that when they got paid out their interest, they would just reinvest again. Well, he just doubled my money. I'm going to double it again. He's making me rich. But they put it back in. They would always just put it back in, put it back in, put it back in. Nobody was taking profits. And so the major problem is if you have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars coming in, and you have to go buy postal coupons that are dirt cheap or that are like super cheap, and then you have to resell them in the U.S., what kind of an issue do you see there? The logistics of actually getting all the postal coupons
I guess
across.
It's not digital. It's all physical.
So for his initial investment of $1,800, he would have had to resell 53,000 postal coupons to realize the arbitrage profits. So he didn't have a way to actually sell those. I mean, like, yes, and it's maybe small quantities, that's easy, but at the scale that he was doing, there was no way that he could actually realize that. And it said that for his subsequent 15,000 investors, he would have had to fill a Titanic-sized ship with coupons to ship them from the U.S. to Europe.
Oh, jeez.
And so the margins were there, but like the logistics and like actually selling these things was just not viable at that volume. So there was kind of a tipping point where this is an interesting kind of slow burnout here, where there was a Boston financial writer suggested that there was no way Ponzi could give those kinds of returns. He was sued. This writer was sued by Ponzi and won a $500,000 suit against this guy. And then
for defamation,
because the burden of proof was on the writer, and the writer couldn't prove anything. So this solved the problem for Ponzi for a little bit of time. There was a light run on the company at that time, where people were curious how he went from. They were like, "Whoa, this guy was penniless basically months ago, and now he's a millionaire." So there was a light run on the thing, and after several. What would happen is they would have these light runs. People would run in and say, "Hey, like, we want our money. We want our." He's like, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I'm gonna get you your money right now. Come up to the thing. Here, let's get you your money back. Here's your money right here." And he's like, "Hey, let's get some donuts in here. Get some coffee." And everybody's starting to feel good. He's like, "Hey, here's your money. Here's your money." He'd pay out some people, and then other people would be like, "Well, maybe I'm overreacting," because he would he would con him. He's a confidence man. And he would talk to him and say, hey, this is fine. Here's your money. You look. And then people will say, oh, look, that guy's getting paid out right there. If I want my money, I can get paid out. He just got paid out. He just got paid out. Maybe I'll just keep my money in. And this happened several times. So there was eventually there were several news articles that came out, and they realized that he was borrowing millions of dollars from the bank to keep the scheme afloat. So he initially had put all of his money within one bank, and at the time, because you had so much money with the bank, you essentially became like a shareholder of that bank, and he became basically a majority shareholder in some of these banks, and he was raiding their coffers and loans to pay for this scheme. And so when this happened, it almost caused like a financial meltdown in the area. He crashed 5 banks, in addition to the Hanover Trust, which is where he was primarily with. So Ponzi's investors were practically wiped out, receiving less than 30 cents to the dollar of what they had put in. They saw their financial pictures all but destroyed. They lost about $20 million in 1920 dollars, which is about $196 million in 2020 dollars. Now, listen to this. Compared to Bernie Madoff, his Ponzi scheme that collapsed in 2008 cost his investors about $18 billion, 53 times the losses of Ponzi scheme. So Bernie
Madoff was basically a Ponzi scheme, what that he was doing.
Yeah, he was doing a Ponzi scheme. Bernie Madoff was doing the same thing. And so,
except for it was with today's money, or several years ago money, and then large Wall Street investors, right?
Sorry, what was that?
It was like large Wall Street investors and stuff that he was doing.
Yeah,
it with.
Well, he was doing it with lots of people, lots of big wig dealers up there. And so this guy, he got. But the interesting is, like, what was the punishment? Okay, so he was indicted by the feds on mail fraud for sending letters to his marks telling them their notes had matured. So what's interesting about a lot of these schemes that I looked into is they get you on things like mail fraud, wire fraud, or like larceny. It's just like these things that are just kind of just little sticking things. Like if you ever commit a scam, don't do it through the mail. He served 3.5 years in prison for this. He got out and was immediately charged by the state. The state charged him with larceny. Larceny is basically a crime involving unlawful taking or theft of personal property of any persons or business. So he appealed this to the Supreme Court, saying, "Hey, this is double jeopardy. I'm being tried twice for it." And they said
the same crime.
They said, "Well, actually, this isn't the same crime. You were indicted for mail fraud. You were charged with mail fraud from the feds, and then the state's charging you for larceny." So he then served 3 more years in jail after that. So remarkably, during his various prison terms, Ponzi continued to receive Christmas cards from some of his more gullible investors, as well as requests from others to have him manage and invest their money from prison.
I'm pretty sure there's probably people that did make some money. I mean, if you got your payout, your 50% whatever increase, and then you didn't put back in, then there's probably some people that did make money.
Yeah, I mean. Yeah, but that's part of the confidence. But the whole thing was a scheme, So when he got out of prison, he goes to Florida, and he starts selling swampland, promising, I think it was the Tampa Bay area, promising 200% return on your money in 60 days. So he got busted for that. Ended up serving 7 years in prison for that. And basically, everybody was like, deport this guy back to Italy. Like, we don't want this guy here. So before he got deported back, he was said to the press, "I went looking for trouble and I found it." And so they deported him back to Italy, and then he later made his way to Brazil. And in Brazil, he basically died very poor in a charity hospital in 1949. He stated, "Even if they never got anything for it, it was cheap at that price. Without malice aforethought, I had given them the best show that was ever staged in their territory since the landing of the Pilgrims. It was easily worth $15 million to watch me pull that thing over." So, kind of crazy. There's one thing that's like, once a con man, always a con man. And this guy basically did the whole thing his whole life.
Yeah.
He was just con. So, maybe that's not true for every case, but it certainly was the case for him.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean that's like such a wide known thing. Is it like talk about common? Oh, it's a Ponzi scheme. Interesting.
Yeah.
I had one here. I had two stories, but the first one is a little bit shorter. So it's a guy named Frank Abagnale. It's the guy, the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, Catch Me If You Can. It's based off that guy. So actually, a story to go along. One of the reasons why I did this story was that actually we had a conference at work where he came and gave like a public speech to everybody, and it was kind of like an entertainment / future thing. So you'll see here why in a second. So he was a very charming and persuasive guy. He could talk his way in and out of any situation, and it was the confidence that he had that he just, for some reason, people just trusted him. And he started doing some things in his younger years, in his teens, that he was doing some check fraud stuff and kind of got good at a couple things, and he got good at forgeries and stuff like that. So eventually he ended up posing as an airline pilot for Pan Am and ended up flying, all around the world as this fake airline pilot. He had fake credentials. What he was doing is he would first he started off making these fake checks, and he would make these fake checks, and he would pretend he was a pilot, and he would go into the office and have them cash these checks for him, and as if he was a pilot. And then he just got deeper and deeper and deeper, and then he actually started like flying these planes, and he actually started doing these things.
Did
And
he actually fly the planes?
I
thought he just flew deadhead. The whole
maybe
time.
I don't know if he was actually like the captain of these, but I think there was a couple situations where he had to do some things. I don't know exactly the whole, but basically he was conning them into thinking that he was a pilot.
Yeah.
So he collected checks that way, forged checks that way for years, and then he actually he posed as a pediatrician in a hospital for almost a year and collected a salary in this hospital as a pediatrician, as like a head pediatrician over the entire ward for a year. And he wasn't even a doctor. I mean, it was just like he conned his way and forged his way into that position. And then he was just getting it was like he was just figuring stuff out he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And they just having people pay stuff for, I don't know. I don't know if anybody got hurt or whatever. So would you have
I was gonna say one interesting thing about the Pan Am thing. I remember that story, and how he got the badge. So he would went on like an internship or like a shadow day as like an intern. He took a bunch of notes about everything, and then he said, okay, he called up a company and said, hey, I am from Pan Am, and I am looking to revamp our badge system. Can you tell me? Can I come in and see what badges you guys can offer us? And the guy's like, yeah, sure, come on in. So he went to the company that prints the badges, and he's like, yeah, so this is the different styles that we can do, this and this and this. And he's like, well, what do we do? Can you give me one that we have currently? He's like, yeah, this is your current model. And he's like, can I keep this? And he's like, yeah. So he kept that, and he put his own picture on it, and that was how he got it. And they believed him the whole time. And I was like, man, that's crazy.
Yeah. So this guy actually came in. So eventually he got tracked down by the FBI. The FBI caught him after he got captured. After several escapes from capture, he then pled guilty and accepted a reduced sentence for basically helping the FBI to help them catch other people that are doing similar things. And he actually ended up becoming a security consultant for the FBI and ended up teaching at like Quantico and like all these different places in Langley and stuff like that, teaching forgery and security and all these different types of things. So this guy came into to the work. He's like, I don't know, maybe in his 60s now. And he was just telling us stories and telling us different cons that he had done, and obviously he was like remorseful and regretful what he did. But he said he hopes that he's paid back his dues at this point.
Yeah.
One of the things that was really funny that he said that he did was when he was like 16 years old, he opened a bank account at the local credit union or the local bank wherever he was, and he went into the bank and he had to deposit like a $5 check or something like that into his account. And so he went up to the counter and he told the lady, I need to deposit this check into my account. And the lady said, okay, well, go over to that table over there and take a deposit slip, put your account number at the bottom of it, and then just put your check with it and hand it to me and I'll put it in your account. And he was like, okay. And so he said he went over there and then and he did it, and then they put the money in his account. So he came in the next day and he went over to the table where they had all the deposit slips, and he just took like a whole sleeve of deposit slips, took those back to his house, and then on his dad's typewriter, he typed his account number into the bottom spaces where the account number goes
no way.
into the deposit slip.
Uh-huh.
And then he took those deposit slips back to the bank the next day.
Oh, gosh.
And he mixed them in all with all of the other ones that were there.
Uh-huh.
And then he said for months and months and months, I would just get random deposits into my account.
Oh, my gosh.
Because people that weren't paying attention or whatever, they just went and grabbed a deposit slip. It had my account number on it. They'd put their check with it, and they'd just give it to the cashier.
Yeah.
And because it was typewritten in there, not handwritten, it looked official. And so he was like, I was having people were depositing their checks into my account for months.
That's hilarious.
And then I guess he ended up getting caught or something like that, or he pulled the money out and just kind of walked away from it, or I can't remember what he said happened, but yeah,
that's wild.
Interesting scam.
Yeah, there's I'm gonna talk about this other guy here, Eduardo de Valfierno. So Valfierno paid. This is kind of a legend. This happened in the 1900s, but Valfierno paid several men to steal the work of art from the Louvre, including museum employee Vicento Perugia on August 21st, 1911. So Perugia hid the Mona Lisa under his coat and simply walked out the front door. He was one of the employees there. So before this heist took place, Valfierno, who was the con man, commissioned French art restorer and forger to make 6 copies of the Mona Lisa. So the forgeries were then shipped around the world, readying them for buyers he had lined up. So he told people, I'm going to steal the Mona Lisa and I'll sell it to you. So he knew that once the Mona Lisa was actually stolen, it would be harder to smuggle copies past customs. So after the heist, the copies were delivered to the buyers, each thinking they had the original, which had been stolen for them. So because Valfierno wanted to sell forgeries, he only needed the original Mona Lisa to disappear and never contacted Perugia again after the crime. So he had the employee walk out with the Mona Lisa, and that's all he needed. He didn't need the Mona Lisa. He just needed the Mona Lisa to be gone so that
other people would think, I got
say,
the Mona Lisa.
Oh, dude, this is it, because this guy said he was going to steal it. Now it's stolen, and he said, this is it. And so he sold like 5 of these copies to other people. So I think that's a really, because he conned he conned the buyers and he conned the good dude who stole it, and he didn't need the Mona Lisa anyway. The only action that he needed was that Mona Lisa to be stolen, and that was it. And then that was enough to sell these cons.
Even if they recovered it,
they
would be like, "Oh, is that the real one, or do I have the real one?" Or it's like.
So I thought that was a really interesting con that was done by this guy. So that was a cool one.
I've got a last one here that's kind of interesting. So this is the story of Gregor McGregor.
Conor McGregor?
Not Conor McGregor.
Okay.
Gregor McGregor. And so Gregor McGregor was a Scottish sailor and adventurist who was an officer in the British Army during the Peninsular War and the Venezuela War of Independence.
Oh.
So this was like the early 1800s, 1810, 1815, somewhere around there. So he actually quickly advanced in ranks and actually made it to the rank of general and spent several years fighting the Spanish for the English. But he spent all of his time fighting the Spanish in and around northern South America, Central America. Honduras is where he spent a lot of his time. And so upon his return to England in 1821, he claimed that the king of Honduras had named him the cacique, which is like the king of a country named Poire. And so he came back. He told everybody in England that, you know, the king of Honduras made me the cacique of Poire. And they were like, well, what's Poire or whatever? And so he described Poire as a developed colony, English colony, and a community of British settlers. He claimed that the land was a beautiful and fertile land, that there was fish and game, abundant fish and game. It was beautiful all year round, never too hot, never too cold. He said that there was a democratic government in Poire, and that there was a British community, and there was bustling and growing business, and that it was such an amazing place. You could even find gold in the rivers. Right, he was telling all these people these things.
That sounds like an amazing. It sounds like California.
Yeah. So then, what did he start doing? He started going to English and French nobles, and basically any investor that he could find, anybody who wanted something, and he started selling them deeds of land.
Oh, really?
Plots of land in Poire to these people, and promising, you know, not only that they could move there and grow and everything else, the locals will actually build you a house when you get there and all this different kind of stuff. And it's this growing community, and it's amazing. He even went as far to, he had drawn up maps of the town, maps of the country, of the city. He had drawn landscape and portraits painted by professional artists and stuff like that, that this is what it looks like.
Oh,
you know,
wow.
He had a currency printed by this, like the Scottish printing company, like the biggest in the area. He had Poire currency printed that people, before they would leave on their journey, they would trade their gold and their English money for this Poire money. And he had military uniforms sewn. He had flags and everything for the country. He would even sing the songs of their independence and everything in the streets and at the bars and all sort of kind of stuff. And so he had official decrees from this as proof, and ballots for voting stuff. And he got a lot of people. So he got a lot of people to buy plots. So in 1822, he sent off this ship of the first settlers to Poire, right? The first settlers now.
Yeah.
Right? And so they went on the ship, and it was in the harbor, and he went on the ship in the harbor and was like, you know, thank you everybody. You're going to get to Poire. You're going to love it. It's going to be amazing. Now I'm going to hang back this time, but I'll be on the next ship over. So you guys go ahead. Right? And so they leave. 6 months later, he sends another, and this ship is like flying the Poire flag and all this different kind of stuff, like big official stuff.
Yeah.
And then 6 months later, he charters another ship, and he says, "Oh, this is the." Actually, he said, "This ship is the largest ship to go to Poire. Any women or children that are traveling on this ship, they get to travel for free. Only the men pay the charter, you know, and everything else." And 200 people were on this ship. And so it was this big old ship out in the harbor and everything. And he rowed his boat out to the harbor, and he stood on the ship, or out to the ship, and he was like, "Hey, you know, I'm going to be on the next ship right there, going there with you." And so he sends them off, and they all go off, or he rows back to the shore and sends them off. So when the first ship arrived, they were a little bewildered at what happened, because they arrived to the beach. And
Of what country? Honduras?
Basically, it was around the Honduras area. They didn't know exactly where they were going, but they arrived to the beach, and it was just jungle. And come to find out, everything was made up. Everything was made up. There was no Poire. There was no country. The king of Honduras didn't even know what was going on. I mean, he knew this guy from all of the battles and stuff, but he didn't know. So these people got there. The 20 people got there, and they were like, "Oh, what's going on?" And it was inhospitable, untamed jungle. That's all it was. And even to this day, it's still, like, the area that they had landed is still completely inhabitable.
No way.
So the captain of the first ship that had sailed these 20 settlers there, it says he came to the private conclusion that McGregor must have duped them. And so he didn't want to announce it to everyone because he didn't want to cause like some mass mutiny or something, whatever. So basically what he did a few weeks after their arrival, he just got back on the ship and just left.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh
gone.
my gosh.
He just left the people there.
Wow.
And there was some natives there that they had kind of grouped up with and stuff, but he just sailed away. Then the next ship got there, and same thing. It came to the jungle, and there was nothing there. There was no city. There was no nothing. There was no people. It was just these natives that were there, and like, why is all these people coming here? So eventually, these people they made their way back to England because there was nothing there for them. And so many of them had invested their whole life savings into buying plots of land that a country didn't even exist, given it to this guy. Only 50 people out of the 270 people that sailed there, only 50 people made it back to England.
Wow.
Over 180 people had died. Maybe some people stayed there, but over 180 people died of either they had died of exposure, they had died of diseases, they had died of malaria. They got malaria really bad. Even some of them died from suicide just because they had lost everything, all hope. So rounding it out here, this guy, Gregor McGregor, right? He wasn't tried in England in courts because there was still people that were supporting him. The people that were there, they kept saying, "Oh, well, it wasn't McGregor's fault. It was the expeditionists. They dropped us off in the wrong spot." Right?
Oh
They were so convinced. The con was so strong that they still thought that there was a country, Poire, somewhere out there that the captains had just dropped them off in the wrong spot.
Yeah.
And so there was a French court that tried McGregor, and they tried him for fraud in 1826 after he attempted a second scheme that was similar to this one. But he was eventually acquitted of all charges, and he lived in London for the next 10, 12 years. Then he eventually, in 1838, he moved to Venezuela, where he was welcomed back with open arms and as a victor, of Venezuela, because he was part of the independence war of Venezuela. And he died in Venezuela in 1845, and he was buried with full military honors and as a king,
Oh my gosh, man.
Yeah.
That's so wild. But I think the lesson here is that, even the people, when you've been duped, it's very hard to admit that you've been duped.
It's a pride thing.
Like we talked about right before the episode, there's this one guy who he called up and this is like the 1800s. He called up a bunch of people in France, scrap metal people, saying, "Hey, I'm a government official. We're gonna scrap the because of X and X, all this stuff that's going on. We're gonna scrap the Eiffel Tower, and we want to maybe do a backdoor deal with you to get you to you guys can take the scrap metal." And he's like, "Oh yeah," and then he made $70,000 off of one company doing this or francs or whatever whatever it was in the time, but and the guy didn't even report it.
We'll pay you $70,000 for the Eiffel Tower so that we can scrap it and make millions potentially. But
And then
he was so ashamed
that he never reported it because he knew he got duped because obviously they weren't. And then he was like, "Oh shoot!" And that was kind of an under the table deal anyway, because it was kind of corrupt for him to do that. And so he was like, so they never reported it. So a lot of times people are they're so unwilling to admit that they were wrong that they just have to keep going with the lie.
Yeah,
well, I think we see a lot of that right now.
Yeah, it's almost like you get so fixated on believing something that it doesn't matter what changes. Your mentality, your fixation is still on, I could not have been wrong. This cannot be wrong. And so you just hold on to that, because if you admit that you were wrong, then all your pride is gone. I mean, it's just maybe I won't go into details, but
maybe Fauci said I wasn't supposed to get it if I got it. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So there's so many examples of this. I was actually just thinking there was one crazy story about this New York socialite, this girl that came into New York, and she was basically a nobody, but she started claiming that her dad was a billionaire and that she was so rich, and she basically got to stay at like these rich hotels only on her word that her dad was some bigwig billionaire. And she like got in these circles of these rich people, and she got them to give her money and all this kind of stuff. And it was like this really fascinating story about how this girl wiggled her way in. She's just some girl from like Ohio. That's the most plain place I can think of. The Midwest. But she went and duped everybody, man. So it's that confidence game you got to watch out for. I guess the lesson is if it seems too good to be true, maybe you better check it out a little bit further. Maybe
that was the first thing I wrote on here at the very top. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah. So anyway,
so watch your back.
Oh yeah, I'm going to change my favorite con man in the movies to Better Call Saul.
Oh yeah,
he's so great. Great show, by the way. Last season's coming up in April. So
really.
All right. Well, thanks to everybody for joining today. We've had some great conversations. We can talk forever about this because it's an interesting topic, but we appreciate you listening. We appreciate your continued support. And if you feel like you like the episode, please leave us a review. We'd appreciate that, and interact with us on our social medias. Their links are in the show notes.
Yeah, we love hearing from you. So let's build that creed together.
Let's do it.